how many times should you train a week? This is a very common question that most lifters have asked themselves multiple times in their journey. Whether you're just starting off, have been doing it for a couple of years, or are advanced and have lots of experience. The truth is, the answer will differ depending on what your goals are, depending on how long you've been training. All of this is going to affect it, but I'm going to try to answer these different situations with what I think is going to be ideal and optimal for that specific group. So starting off, we have beginners. So if you're just getting started or you're within your first 1 to 2 years at the gym, I would recommend training anywhere from 4 to 6 times a week. Usually in that higher end is going to be better because you have your newbie gains coming in and you're going to see progress very, very quickly. You're also going to recover very quickly because your body is getting used to the stimulus of lifting weights, breaking down the muscle, rebuilding it. So this is when you're going to see the most amount of progress. The reason why you can train a little bit more, which I recommend, like the higher range of 6 times a week, is because you aren't going to be lifting as heavy. So you're going to be able to recover a lot quicker. That is the main reason. The heavier weights you lift, the longer it's going to take for your muscles to recover because you're causing more damage to it. Which makes sense if you think about it. If you deadlift 500 pounds, it's going to take longer to recover from that than if you deadlift 100 pounds or 135 pounds as a beginner. If you did the same amount of reps for both, obviously it's going to take a lot longer for this because it's much heavier. It's like 4 times heavier than the first weight. Even if both of these are a 1 rep max for the lifter, right? For the advanced lifter, that's 1 rep max. For the beginner lifter, that could be a 1 rep max. And it's also going to put a greater stress on your CNS, or central nervous system, which is a big part of recovery and why you need to take a little less days on as you get more advanced, because it's just more taxing on your system, not just your muscles. Now we have the intermediate lifter. So you're maybe 2 to 6 years into your lifting journey, you're getting some good results, maybe not as fast as the first 1 to 2 years, but it's still respectable and the progress is going up every week. With this group, I'm going to recommend a little bit less. So maybe not 6 days a week, or maybe 6 days every 2 weeks. So usually what you'll do for a training cycle is you'll do, 2 or 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 or 3 days on, 1 day off, taking your rest days, right, to let your CNS and everything recover. They're doing a bit of active recovery like stretching or walking or some form of cardio. So for this group, I'd recommend 3 to 5 days a week for a majority of your weeks. Like I said, you can do 6 like every other week, like 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on. At this point, it's more important to be listening to your body, being more intuitive and aware of how you're feeling. If you're still sore from your previous workout for whatever body part you're going to be hitting, like let's say you hit chest 3 days ago, 4 days ago, but you hit like a crazy PR, you finally hit, 205 for a couple of reps and you're feeling really sore, right, on the bench. The chest feeling sore, even though it's your next workout day. So theoretically, it only takes anywhere from 48 to 72 hours to fully recover. But if you did enough damage and you're still sore, to me, that's just an indication that you're not completely recovered, or why would you still be sore? So obviously the smaller muscles usually take shorter amount of time to recover. So for abs, forearms, calves, maybe it could be 24 hours depending on how hard you hit them. For back, triceps, and shoulders, like your arms, it can take 24 to 48 hours to recover. And then for the bigger muscles, for more of those compound lifts, like your chest, back, legs, quads and hamstrings, glutes, usually it's going to take a bit longer, like 48 hours to 72 hours to recover. And remember, if you're taking your muscles to failure with your workouts, like you're going very heavy as much as your body can possibly do, for that 5 rep range like I recommend, a couple reps lower, a couple reps higher is fine, right? As long as you're in that rough ballpark, you're going to be getting the most gains. You're going to be hitting that 80-20 principle for progress and growing muscle. It could even take 5 to 7 days. Like I said, if you've really cooked your CNS, you do like a really, really heavy deadlift day, you might not be recovered in 3 days. That's completely fine. That's why it's important to listen to your body and not just use these guidelines. That's what they are. They're guidelines. They're not hard rules that you should stick to. Like, okay, my abs have been recovered. It's 24 hours, but they're still sore. It's like you shouldn't try to do more abs. You should let them continue recovering, because when you're not working them out, that's when they're growing. Working out causes the stimulus, breaks down the muscle, but sleeping, eating enough protein, enough carbs and fats, recovering is what's actually building up the muscle. You're building it up when you're not working out. So if you're still feeling sore, there's a good chance your body's still building up the muscle for it. So why do I want to keep breaking it down when I'm already getting the stimulus and it's already growing from the previous workout I did? And then if you're an advanced lifter, so now you've been lifting for 6+ years, I'd recommend 3 to 5 times a week, usually shooting for more of that lower range of 3 to 4 times. To make any progress now, you have to be continuing to increase the weight. And you've probably gotten quite strong if you've been doing this consistently for the past 6+ years. So now everything you do is much more taxing on your central nervous system. And if you lift heavier weight, it's going to take longer for your body to recover and build it back. The best way to describe this is like if you go for a run and you haven't ran for a year. You know, you look online, how long does it take to recover from a run? Maybe it's like, oh, like a day or two. But then you're sore for a week, right? Everything's just in pain because you haven't run and all these muscles are just like past the point of failure, and it's going to take a lot longer to recover. You're just like incredibly sore for much longer than normal. It's that same feeling when you've been lifting for a long time. You're going to be much sore for longer, especially if you're continuing to progress and like get stronger on the movements. And these are all just kind of good rules of thumb. None of this is like a strict guideline to stick to. This is just what I recommend. I like to do a push-pull leg split of 3 days on, 1 day off. But if my chest is still feeling sore from my first day, I'll take an extra rest day. I'm not going to hit it on the next day because my goal is to continually get stronger. And that doesn't necessarily have to be for my 5 rep max. That could also be, for an 8 rep or a 10 rep. I'm just trying to outdo my last week's or my last time's performance with the same weight for whatever rep range I was going for. That's how you make progress. That's how you continually progressive overload. If the relative weight or the relative reps are going up, you're going to be growing. Because it's all just a multiple of how much you're lifting relative to how heavy you are. And making sure you're recovering well, so sleeping enough, eating enough protein, enough carbs before or after your workout, eating enough fats to be able to optimize your hormones, and just doing the fundamentals. And of course, I've learned this the hard way through experience. So maybe my 3rd or 4th year into lifting, I was just doing it all, right? I was going like 7 days a week, and you will see really good progress doing this for about a month or two. It's like a new stimulus. You're just doing so much. I was doing very high volume training, like 4 reps in exercise, which now I've switched to 2 since I think this is a lot more effective if you just increase your intensity or go into failure for majority of your sets. Definitely for your first working set. But yeah, working out like 7 days a week. And then I was also doing MMA like 2 to 4 times a week as well. And I saw really good progress for the first, like I said, 1 to 2 months. But then my central nervous system just got way too taxed and things started falling apart. I started getting injured my shoulder more. Wrist started hurting, knee. You just start building up these different kind of nagging pains or injuries. You're not giving yourself enough time to recover. And even though I was getting really good pumps from my workouts, my progress essentially halted. I was not getting any stronger. Even though I was eating enough food and sleeping enough, I was just doing too much volume that it was not sustainable for my goals of getting bigger and adding more muscle. I don't want you to fall into that same trap or make that same mistake that I did. Where you're very excited, you love what you're doing, but you overtrain, costing you progress, and if you get injured, it could cost you a year of progress, which is not optimal. The main thing I want to emphasize is do not get injured. This is the number one thing that'll stop your progress. No amount of tricks or supplements or whatever is going to give you that 10%, 5% edge and kind of boost you up is going to be worth losing a year of training or 6 months or however long you're out for. Now, I kind of caveated this a little bit in the beginning, but it depends what you're training for, right? If you're training to build muscle, I think the days a week that I gave you is a good rule of thumb. I try to do 3 days on, 1 day off. And if I'm feeling sore, I'll take extra time off. So usually on average, I'm in the gym about 3 to 4 times a week. If you average it out through a year for extra rest days that I take here and there, when I'm still recovering, make sure I can make progress in my next workout. So I think this is ideal for building muscle as well as getting stronger. If that's your main goal for aesthetics and to improve how you look overall. If your main goal is powerlifting, this is going to change because you're trying to do 1 rep maxes for competition. So the training style is going to be a little different. You're going to be wanting to hit your squat, bench, deadlift a lot more frequently. But I would argue this is not ideal for aesthetics. You want to be very strong for some of these movements, but I think there are just better movements overall in terms of a risk to reward standpoints, like not getting injured. Because with barbell, there's a lack of that stability aspect, which is going to affect how much force you can move through a bar. And then there's the bodybuilding side, which depending if you're natural or enhanced is going to change how your workouts are going to look, how much volume you can do. You're going to be able to do a lot more volume if you're an enhanced lifter because you're going to recover much better. And I can't really speak on that because I don't know the exact details for this, but I would still assume that working out with the ranges I said would have best effects with 2 hard sets and a couple warm-ups leading up to that. But if your goal is also sport specific, it also changes because then you're going to be wanting to prioritize recovery for your sport and making sure your performance is optimized for your actual game days because that's going to be the most important thing to you, while the working out is the supplement to help with your main thing. So it's all relative and there's not one answer for everyone. I would always like to watch videos where there's just one solid answer. So if I had to give you my answer, 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off, push pull legs. If you're still feeling sore for the muscle that you're going to be hitting that workout, take an extra rest day. And usually over a year, this will end up with maybe 4 days a week on average of working out. And that's fine. That's what you need. You're making good progress, not getting injured, and then picking the right exercises and progressing correctly. and recovering enough. That's the 80-20 of it all to get the results you want. That's what I'm personally doing, but teach their own, right? You could be doing a different split. Maybe you're doing upper lower. Maybe you're doing full body workout, which just changing those two variables alone would change all the advice in this video. Because you can't work out full body, like 3 days on, 1 day off. It wouldn't make any sense. That you'd probably want to do 3 days a week. But if you're doing full body, maybe you're too busy to go that much for the optimal results of like growing like the different muscles individually. Or maybe you're just training for more of an athletic approach where you want to just build everything up together, so it's like working in conjunction. Or maybe you're more cardio oriented, like you're doing races like biking or running, which is going to change for you too. So it is very nuanced. I gave my approach. I appreciate you guys for watching. I love you guys. Let me know down in the comments if I didn't address your specific situation. I tried to make it as broad as possible kind of at the end here for as many people to be able to have a good idea of what I would do if I were them and what I think is optimal. On average, you want to train each muscle group about twice a week. 48 to 72 hours to recover is a good rule of thumb, but depending how much you're lifting, will affect your CNS differently, and sometimes you might need a little more, sometimes you might need a little less. That being said, remember to take consistent action on your main thing, and don't stop. Peace.